prophecies of the Bible, okay? Because the way that the prophecies of the Bible had been understood by Protestant reformers was very simple. The prophecies began in the time of the prophet and extended down to the end of time, like we see in the prophecy of Daniel, right? It begins in Babylon and then extends down to the end of time. Does that make sense, everyone? And in Daniel chapter 7, it begins in Babylon, extends down to the end of time. You come to the book of Revelation, the prophecies begin in the days of John and extend to the end of time. This is what's called the historicist school of interpretation, because the prophecies are seen as moving through the historical scope, through the historical continuum. Making sense, everyone? Okay, well, plainly, if you have a historical antichrist that's going to appear at a certain time and do certain things, I mean, you only have one show in town that could possibly be, and that's why they universally pegged the papacy as the antichrist. So what you have to do is you have to come up with a new system, almost like reinventing language, a new system so that the papacy would be screened. Okay? And they came up with two systems. They basically attacked it. These were Jesuit Catholic priests that came up with these alternative systems that basically screened the papacy from being the Antichrist, and they did it from two opposite ways. And let me explain. The Futurist system of prophetic interpretation basically says, and I'll just draw a little graph here, okay? We'll just say this is the beginning here, right, in Eden. Then you have all of your various epochs of time. Here's the cross, right? You'd have the flood here and Mount Sinai here and going into Babylon here, and then Jesus, right? Then you have the early church and then the Middle Ages. And then you're going to have this thing called the rapture. Okay? And what happens is that God has a plan for Israel, and He started to fulfill that plan for Israel here at Mount Sinai, but Israel basically failed, so to speak. But God still really wants to renew that covenant with literal Israel. And so what's happened here is a great big parenthesis between the cross and the rapture. Does anyone know what that parenthesis is called? It's called the church. It's called the church. Okay? So we're all here living in this little parenthesis called the church, but then there's going to be this thing called the secret rapture. How many of you have heard of the secret rapture? Anybody? You've heard of the secret rapture, the Left Behind series. So then this secret rapture takes place, and everybody's raptured away. Right? Except for the unbelievers and the Jews that have not yet put their faith in Jesus. So guess what? This here was the Jews, right? This here was the Jews. And then you have this great big parenthesis that God didn't anticipate, or, He did anticipate it in that sense, but it wasn't plan A, it was plan B. But once the church is taken out of the way, now God can continue His covenant relationship with the guess who? With the Jews. And how long does that last? Does anybody know? It's the so-called 7 years of tribulation, which is totally not biblical. There's no 7 years of tribulation in the Bible. I'll give anybody here $5,000 right now before you leave this room. You can show me 7 years of tribulation in the Bible. It's just not, it's not there. Okay, it does not exist. It's a figment of someone's imagination. But here's the thing. This is to answer your question. So basically, when you and I go read the book of Revelation, and when we look there and we think, wow, the mark of the beast, and wow, the 7 last plagues, and we see all of these things, we see those things as taking place sometime in our lifetime. In other words, sometime in the lifetime of the church, right? But this system of interpretation here basically says, oh, Revelation? Oh, the book of Revelation? Oh, that's for all those people who don't get taken in the rapture. Oh, that's only for the people that don't get taken in the rapture. And so the mark of the beast and the Antichrist and all that stuff, that all takes place after God. You know what I mean when I say rapture? You with me, Ann? The rapture? Yeah, but you have to be, like, the rapture in the way that this is understood is, let's just say, we'll just split it right here down the middle. We're all here and we're just hanging out, we're having a nice time in our seminar, and all of a sudden, literally, that half of the room disappears. They're just gone. Right? They have been taken to heaven. They've been raptured, and we all remain. They're the saved, we're the lost. Jesus takes them to heaven, we're remaining. Okay, are we all clear on that? And so you guys have been raptured, and we remain. Oh no, what are we going to do? Well, guess what? We're all here. The rest of us are here for guess how many years? 7 years, and we get a second chance to accept Jesus as our Savior. Right? While they're up in heaven enjoying heaven, we're down here, and God is now renewing His covenant with the literal Jewish nation. If you're confused, good, because it is extremely confusing. So God is now, He's renewing His covenant with the literal Jewish people, and now, guess what? There's going to come an Antichrist, and there's going to be a mark of the beast, and we need to avoid the mark of the beast, and all of that's going to take place in this little 7-year period. Here's the point. Basically, the entire book of Revelation, inarguably one of the most important books in the Bible, right here, this book, okay, in this system of interpretation, is basically useless unless you didn't get raptured. It really says nothing to you. It's only for those people after the rapture, right? Because all these people, they didn't even see an Antichrist. They never dealt with the mark of the beast. They never dealt with 666 or any of that stuff. So this was called the Futurist system of interpretation. And it's called the Futurist system because it basically takes the little horn, the Antichrist, and all of that, and it puts it way down in the future after the rapture. Now, if all that takes place after the rapture, guess who is not the Antichrist now? Papacy. They're screened. Game over. It's just a totally different way of interpreting Scripture. Totally wrong, by the way, for a variety of reasons. First of all, there is absolutely no biblical evidence for a secret rapture. None whatsoever. Number two, there is no biblical evidence for this 7 years of tribulation where God is going to renew a covenant with the literal Jewish nation or any such thing. The whole thing is a great big figment of someone's imagination. Now, here's the saddest part of all. This system of interpretation, Anne and the rest of us, is basically the interpretive school that 90% of conservative Protestant churches believe today. In other words, you go to your average Baptist church, you go to your average fundamental, like Assemblies of God church or Pentecostal church, that's what they believe. And it was literally invented by the Catholic Church to screen the papacy from detection as the Antichrist. Okay? Are you with me? Does that make sense? Okay. Well, they would say, now that's the second system here. That's the preterist system. Okay, now the preterist system is a little different. We'll draw a little graph for them as well. And so you have the same. You have Eden here, right? And then you have Mount Sinai going into Babylon. Then you have the cross and then the church age, right? Now, the preterists say the exact opposite. The preterists basically say, oh, yeah. Everything in Revelation, Daniel, the little horn, all of that stuff took place in the first century with pagan Rome. So all that mark of the beast stuff, that was the worship of the pagan Roman emperors, Pontificus Maximus, and all. Oh, yeah. That stuff is all done. So the preterists say that basically Revelation is all this way. Basically, since the time of pagan Rome, all that stuff has already been fulfilled. It's all done. And this is what most of your liberal Protestant churches believe. This is what most of your Presbyterians believe. Your Episcopalians believe this. Of course, the Episcopalians, it's hard to tell what they believe anymore. But your ones that still hold to some semblance of biblical interpretation, these are going to be your liberal Protestant churches, like the Presbyterians. They believe basically in preterism. And so, guess what? The papacy is effectively screened from being identified because all of the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation were fulfilled by the 2nd century A.D. Okay? So look at what you've got here. You basically have one school that says, oh, yeah, Revelation, that's all after the rapture at some nondescript time in the future. And the other one says, oh, yeah, Revelation, that's all from the 2nd century and before A.D. So guess what? You have two schools of interpretation that it's impossible for the papacy to be the Antichrist because it doesn't exist yet in the preterist system, and it's all the people to whom it would have applied have been raptured in the futurist system. And it's literally, absolutely, totally true that these two systems were invented by the Roman Church, by Jesuits, in order to screen the papacy from detection as the Antichrist, because every single Protestant reformer, without exception, believed that the papacy was the little horn and was the Antichrist. Every one of them. So basically this began to happen in the 15th and 16th centuries and really became popular. I mean, it's literally tragic. Only just in the last few years. Really the Left Behind series and maybe 50 years before that has really just been the onset of this idea of futurism, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really a farce, and it's absolutely tragic. In fact, you might as well know, I know personally of only one church, and I'm willing to be corrected on this, I personally know of only one church that continues to hold to the Protestant biblical historicist interpretation of the Bible. And that's the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Literally. And I'm not just saying that to be grandstanding or to say, hey, look at my church, I'm the big tough guy. Not at all. Literally. I don't think there is one other church that holds to the basic Protestant principle of interpreting the Bible right in one continuum. I mean, that's the commonsensical way to interpret it. It's the common sense way to interpret it is you just read the passage. You just read the passage right on through, and it's going to lead you to a historicist understanding. And this is why, without exception, the Protestant reformers were historicists.